Australia's alpine region is one of the most beautiful, fragile and inaccessible parts of our incredible continent. Europeans first ventured into these mountains in the mid-1800s. The horses they rode were direct descendants of those brought to Australia aboard the first fleet.
They were picked up around the Cape as they came around Africa. Most of them were of African stock, arrived in Australia and Sydney, and were used by the explorers and the settlers to move west as the nation expanded.
As the expansion gathered pace, some horses escaped their owners and began to roam free in the high country. They became known as Brumbies. Wild horses that, thanks to a bush poet named Banjo, soon became the thing of legend. Now, 160 years later, it's estimated that there are as many as 5,000 Brumbies running wild across Kosciuszko National Park. And the damage they're doing to this fragile environment is ringing alarm bells and prompting some to call for more radical action. Di Thompson from the National Parks Association would like to see a resumption of aerial and ground shooting to control Brumby numbers.
You've got to bite the bullet and bring in aerial and ground shooting because it's effective and it's quick and it's safe for the horses.
But many locals with an attachment to the Brumby disagree and reject calls to begin shooting horses within the park.
In 2001, in Guy Fawkes National Park, the National Parks Wildlife Service shot over 600 Brumbies and left them to die for 2 weeks. They will never do it again, and we'll make sure they never do it again, but there is no way that is the way to kill Brumbies. I mean, it's irresponsible, it's cruel, it's inhumane, and it's condemned by the entire nation.
A recent federal government report into the alpine region confirms that the Brumbies are having an environmental impact on the area, one that's expected to magnify the effects of climate change.
The big concern we have at the moment is in terms of what they're doing with erosion and soil movement. We can see some areas where some pretty severe damage has occurred.
It's this type of damage that threatens the continuing existence of the native corroboree frog.
The corroboree frog is an iconic species in this area, and if we can't get on top of the horse numbers, they could certainly have a big impact on the habitat for that particular species.
Steve Horsley runs the Park Services Horse Management Program, which uses a technique known as passive trapping to remove horses from Kosciuszko. But even he acknowledges that the current plan isn't reducing the total number of horses in the park.
We took out 500 here and about another 150 in the southern end of the park. If they're breeding at the rate of 20%, we need to increase the intensity of our programs to at least try and keep the numbers down so they're not increasing. In our opinion on what the damage we're seeing at the moment, 5,000 is far too many horses for this environment.
Passive trapping in Kosciuszko has been a dismal failure. It's a tokenistic approach with a lot of hard work and commitment by the Park Service, but really it's not keeping up with the current numbers that are born every year. So the numbers continue to soar with very little constraint.
And until those numbers do start to fall, it's a sure bet that passionate conservationists on one side and horse lovers on the other will continue to butt heads over the Brumbies.
They're more than an environmental issue, they're a cultural issue, they're a heritage issue. These animals, they have a very deep connection with Australian history and the Australian psyche.
I'm passionate about Kosciuszko and its future because we don't have a lot of alpine or subalpine areas. I'm a grandparent now. I'd love to have the opportunity to show my grandchildren these areas in a nice, pristine state.